The fears we don't overcome become our limits. And so if you don't learn to deal with fear, it's going to deal with you, period. And almost everything we do in life is influenced by fear. Fear is a liar. It's trying to take away from you. It's trying to keep you, in mediocre land, if you will. Everything we've ever wanted is sitting right over there on the other side of your comfort zone. And so you have to break through that. A Navy SEAL doesn't become a Navy SEAL by sitting in a classroom. I mean, that's part of it, but no. Where you become a Navy SEAL is when they take you out during Hell Week and put you in the ocean off the coast of San Onofre in that cold water. And then it's 3:00 in the morning. And then they tell you, oh, by the way, there's 9 different types of killer sharks in this water. Have a nice time.
The Thomas Green podcast is owned and made possible by Ethical Marketing Service. If your business is struggling with Google or Facebook ads, maybe you're frustrated figuring it out or there's a performance issue, Ethical Marketing Service has worked on hundreds of accounts and we can help in this area. If you would like to find out if we can help, it's a free, no salesy consultation call and the link is in the description. Enjoy the episode.
Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the episode today, we have Dave Albin. Dave, welcome.
Hey, Thomas. Dude, thank you. Thanks for having me, man. It's always an honor.
It is my pleasure. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Well, for, many, many years, I've been immersed in the personal development industry. I took a very interesting path to get here. Sometimes when I get asked, I jokingly say, Bugs Bunny would say, "What happened? How'd you get here?" I say, "Well, I took that left-hand turn at Albuquerque." So got here years ago. I literally, where do I start? In 1995, I went to a Tony Robbins seminar. Now, I can't assume everybody knows who Tony Robbins is, but he's pretty well known in the motivational world. Most business owners, entrepreneurs, executives, CEOs, they know who Tony Robbins is. Again, really famous guy. And so a friend of mine called me on the phone and said, Tony was coming to town. Do you want to go? And I said, sure. And the next thing I know, he's calling me on the phone and telling me, what we need to do to get ready for the event. Drink a lot of water and bring snacks and because you're going to spend a lot of time in the room. And I laugh because that's an understatement. Anybody who's ever been to a Robbins event knows that you are going to spend a lot of time in the room. And what I mean by that too is that it's like you don't even want to go to the bathroom, right? When he's on stage and he's delivering content and he's in a groove, man, you don't want to miss a word. And then they also said, bring a good attitude and be ready to play full out. Well, just as he's getting ready to get off the phone, he goes, oh, by the way, I almost forgot, man, we're going to be doing a firewalk. And here's what my brain said. Hell no. Now, here's what's interesting about that moment. I don't know what a firewalk means. I have no references for that. And I'm sure some of your audience doesn't know what a firewalk is. However, the word fire and the word walk in the same sentence didn't sound like anything I wanted to be doing. So I was just like, no, I ain't doing it. However, I'm not saying anything to my buddy, right? I don't want him to think I'm wussing out. I'm just kind of going along with it. I'm being subservient, going, yeah, Dan, sure. Firewalk. Yeah, sounds great. Got off the phone and said, no, ain't doing that. I want to see Tony, but I'm not doing this firewalk thing. So the big day comes and Tony took the stage at 2:00 in the afternoon. And I'm in a room with 3,500 people. So it's a pretty good crowd. And 10 hours later, literally after midnight, Tony goes, take your shoes off. And I'm like, oh no, I see where you're going with that, pal. You're not tricking me, man. And, but I got a problem. My buddy that I'm with is taking his shoes off. 3,500 people, guess what they're doing? They're taking their damn shoes off. And I'm like, you got to be kidding people. You're falling for it. Don't be so stupid, And so it gets worse because when he gets you going out there, he gets everybody to start clapping and chanting, right? So now you got 3,500 people walking out into this huge parking lot where the firewalk's going to take place. And firewalking meaning you're going to walk across hot coals, right? And he's got them chanting and clapping. So they're going, yes, yes, all walking out there. And of course, I'm walking out there going, no, ain't doing it. Sorry, ain't going to happen. Now, my plan is when I get out there, I'm going to ditch my buddy. and I'm going to go hide in the back. Because by this time I know what's going on, right? 10 hours, I know, okay, it's a firewalk. You're going to be walking on hot coals. Oh, hell no. So that's my plan. I'll ditch my buddy, go hide in the back. Nobody's going to know. Well, when you get out there, it's even worse because Tony's got African drummers. So it's dun, 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 dun. And how they set this up, Thomas, is over in the corner, they built a giant fire. And when I mean giant, it's huge. They built a pit. And it's about 35 feet wide, and it's every bit of 70 feet long. And all they do all day is just keep adding wood to it, cord after cord after cord of hardwood, seasoned hardwood like oak and hickory. And so after 10 hours of this, it renders. And so how do you walk 3,500 people? Well, you put a whole bunch of wheelbarrows together, and you take them over to that pit, and you load the coals in a wheelbarrow. Then you bring a wheelbarrow in between two lanes of sod, of grass. And that lane, it's called a fire lane. It's about 3 feet wide, approximately 18 feet long. And they just take a flathead shovel and they sprinkle those coals on that grass and they pat it down. That's what you walk on. Well, again, as I said earlier, I'm having none of it. I'm already in the back. I'm hiding out. I got it all figured out. No, I don't. Why did Tony Robbins bring firewalking into his events? Well, because it's probably the most life-changing experience any human will go through, period. He also knows that if he doesn't get you across the fire, the paradigm shift's not going to happen. So he doesn't want you to miss out. He also knows there's people like me that are hiding in the back. So what's he do? He trains people to come find your ass. Literally, I'm back there figuring I got it all figured out, right? Next thing I know, here comes this guy, comes out of nowhere, makes eye contact with me. Won't take his eyes off me. Interesting. Wonder if he was taught to do that. He gets 20 feet from me and he looks at me kind of weird, like there's something wrong with me, right? Like a dog that hears a funny noise, kind of tilting his head. And he's like, hey man, are you okay? No, of course I'm not, but I'm not going to say that. I lie like everybody else, right? I'm like, yeah, no, I'm fine, man. Nothing to see here, pal. Move along. Well, he doesn't wait. He goes right for the kill shot, man. He goes, hey man, are you going to walk tonight? And I'm like, absolutely not. It's like, you idiot. What do you think I'm hiding in the back for? Well, he's like, and I said it to him, with some voice inflection. And he's like, hey man, it's cool. No problem. Listen, man, we don't want you to do anything you don't want to do. And I went, wow, okay. This guy's going to get me out of here. No, he's not. He's tricking me. Because the next question he asked me was, and by the way, I don't know who this guy is to this day. I have no idea. I wish I did. That man right there changed my life with one question. And he's the guy that helped me break through this fear. And I've firewalked tens of thousands of people. I mean, we've walked everybody from Oprah to Usher and Pitbull and Chuck Liddell. And, I can go on and on and on and on and on. Tens of thousands of people over the years. And without him, I'm not there. And the question he asked me was, wouldn't you at least like to watch? And I thought, well, sure. Yeah, I'll watch. What harm can come of that? Let's go watch these people burn their feet off. And so he goes, hey, man, you can't see anything from back here. And he's telling the truth. I'm 100 yards away. I got 3,500 people standing in front of me. I can't see anything. I can hear it. I can see that big fire. I can hear the drums. I can hear them chanting. They're already firewalking. And when they get to the celebration and after they complete, they're acting like kids at Christmas. They're jumping up and down and screaming. I mean, it's a dog and pony show, Thomas. That's all I can tell you. And I've never seen or witnessed anything like it other than a Tony Robbins firewalk seminar. So I took the bait. I'm like, okay, I'll go stand in line. I'll work through all these people. And he goes, eventually you'll get up there. You'll be able to see it. Well, as I'm in the line now and I'm kind of walking along, another guy comes up to me, another stranger. And he whispers in my ear and he goes, he knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go. And pooh, this guy disappeared into the night. And I'm like, dude, what do you mean? What do you mean he knows when you're ready? When he says go, you go. What does that even mean? And so now I'm walking along and I get to a point, I still got 1,000 people in front of me. I get to a point though, I can see it at an angle. I can't see in front of me, but I can see it at an angle. And they're doing it. They are walking on hot coals. And my brain's going, what's wrong with these people? We're mammals. We're taught to run from fire, not walk on it. And so now I'm mesmerized. Can't take my eyes off it. It's like a car wreck. You're staring at it. And I'm just staring and I'm walking, and boom. The next thing I know, guess where I am? I'm at the front of the line, right? And it's like, how the hell did you get here? And so now I'm looking down at that fire lane, right? Again, it's about 3 feet wide, 18 feet long, and the coals are on top of it. And they're bright red. They're glowing bright red. It's not a question. Oh, are they hot? Are you kidding me? Of course they are. They're probably close to 1,000 degrees. Well, and the wheelbarrow's there. So you can feel the heat coming off. So, and bro, I'll tell you, man, my heart's pumping. It's ready to jump out of my chest any moment. I'm scared to death. Well, there's a trainer standing right there. There's one on every lane. And all of a sudden the trainer goes, eyes up. Like, oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah. I was in a room with Tony for 10 hours. What did he teach us to do? Keep our eyes up. Okay. Got it. And all of a sudden this trainer goes, squeeze your fist and say yes. And I went, yes. And he went, stronger. And I went, yes. Well, he could tell I wasn't in a peak state. I was leaving a lot on the table and he knew it. So he wants you in a peak state. So does the fire, I can tell you. And so he screamed at me. He's like, stronger. I threw my hands in the air and I said, yes. And he goes, go, go, go. Boom. I took off. Remember the guy? He knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go. I did. Talk about a setup. Well, here's the first thing I learned about firewalking, Thomas. When you take the first step, oh, you'll take the second, third, fourth, and fifth. I promise you. You're not going to stop on that fire lane, right? Well, they have a couple guys at the end. They catch you. And they're like, stop, wipe your feet and celebrate. And I'm wiping my feet and I'm celebrating and I'm looking back. I just walked on coals that are 1,000 degrees. For a minute, I even thought I burnt myself, which I did not. Both feet, no burns, nothing. And now I'm sitting there and I'm celebrating like a little kid. It's exhilarating. It's like you can accomplish anything in that moment, or so that's what you believe, right? It's like, where's the bus, people? Let's go climb Mount Everest. Let's go. Well, when you're in the celebration inn with 3,500 people, you're all kind of going through the same thing. Your self-worth, your self-confidence, your self-belief just got raised, and it's collective. So you're celebrating it together as a unit. Very interesting dynamic, right? It's why Tony does it on day one, because this is a 4-day event. UPW, Unleash the Power Within, is a 4-day event. This is the day one that night. Well, I'll tell you where it gets really interesting and how I came forward with all this was the next day. So we come in, it's day 2. We're in the foyer. We're getting ready to go into the venue. And I've never seen or witnessed anything like it in my life. 3,500 people, and we were getting along like we had known each other our entire lives. People are hugging, they're laughing, some of them are singing, they're connecting at a humanistic level unlike anything I'd ever witnessed, including sports. And I was like, are you kidding me? Did we drink the Kool-Aid last night? Yeah, we sure did. Absolutely, we did. And so I kind of reference it sometimes. It's kind of like a near-death experience that you experience with somebody else, and how that connects you, emotionally. And that's where Tony wants them, man. He's got them. He knows, because if you can walk on coals that are 1,000 degrees, he's going to ask you straight up, what else can you do? How many of you did not want to do it last night, but you did it? And that's the key, getting you to step out of your comfort zone, right? So later in the event, I met one of Tony's trainers, super beautiful dude, man. His name's Ted Macy. Him and his wife, Mary, were both trainers for Tony. So I'm talking to him and I just kind of said off the cuff, so it must be really awesome to be in this environment on a regular basis, especially after what I've been experiencing. He goes, oh yeah. He goes, I'm here several times a year. He says, I'll tell you what, you see those people standing over there with those black shirts with the pink writing on the back? Yeah. He goes, dude, they're volunteers. They're just like you. They came to an event, loved it, and now they come back and they volunteer their time, because we use about 350 volunteers for a big event like this. And so he goes, look, here's what you do. Go home and call Robbins Research. Tell them you want an application for a volunteer group person, and they'll send it to you. Well, I did. 9 weeks later, after I did that, I got a letter in the mail, and it said, Dave Albin, congratulations. You've been selected to crew at the Anthony Robbins Company. Well, color my ass happy. There I am. I'm in. I'm there. And it escalated quickly. First of all, they look at the application pretty carefully, Thomas. And I had a security background and a military background. So they went, hey, we could put him on the security detail and he can help take care of Tony's celebrities. Okay, they did that. I can do a podcast on that alone. Talk about some interesting times with some interesting people for sure. And I lived on a farm. So I knew how to run a log splitter. I knew how to make kindling. I know how to use an axe. I know what hardwood is. I know what the difference between hickory and oak and all that, right? So they put him on the fire team. Well, that's right where I wanted to be. And so that all happened in like 95 and 96. They made me a subcontractor in 96. And prior to that, if you wanted to go to an event, you were a volunteer, you had to pay your way. You had to pay your airfare, you had to pay your hotel, you had to pay all that. Well, my wife at the time didn't like that, right? Because I'm spending $1,500 every time I'm going to a Tony Robbins seminar. And I did like 5 or 6 of them. And she's like, who the hell's Tony Robbins? Because she's got no references. She's never been there. She's not really into the personal development industry like I was at the time. So she wasn't happy. Well, they did something really smart. They gave me a free ticket once I became a subcontractor. So I took her. And after she graduated, we were walking on the beach. I'll never forget. She looked at me and she goes, all right, I get it. Go run with this guy. I drank the Kool-Aid. This guy's pretty amazing. If you want to hang with this guy, and as long as he's going to pay for it, we don't have to take money out of our savings account. Run with this dude. And I did. So that all happened 95, 96, 2003, my life forever changed. Tony Robbins offered me the fire captain position, which meant that I would take over all of Tony's firewalks globally. And because I was homeschooling at the time, he even agreed to pay for my family because my kids, homeschool. So he's like, yeah, let's bring them on the road. So my daughter at the time was 6, my son was 7, and their first event with their dad and Tony Robbins was in Sydney, Australia. So yeah, my kids have been pretty badly abused. That was in 03. 05, we set the world record. We went to London. We went to the Docklands at the Excel Center. We firewalked 12,300 people. Now, I say world record. Let me be very clear about something. Guinness Book of World Record was not there. However, that's the biggest firewalk in our planet's history. And the only firewalk that comes anywhere close to that is another Tony Robbins seminar at 10 grand or 9,000 people. So that happened in 05. And then in 2014, what got me here on your podcast, I'm driving down the road. My phone rings. It's Google. This is Dave Albin? Yes. Are you the Dave Albin that does the firewalks for Tony Robbins? Yes. What can I do for you? They said, well, if you're not under any contractual obligation or non-compete, we'd like to talk to you about hiring you. Okay. Well, homeboy's a free agent. What you got? They said, well, we've got an event in Mountain View for 148 executives, and we'd like you to come do a firewalk. When's it going to be? Well, it's going to be in the middle of the day after lunch. I said, I can't do it in the middle of the day. You're going to have to do it at night, or I can't do it. It's a safety issue. They said, oh, okay. I go, however, if you want to create the paradigm shift, which I'm guessing that's why you're calling me, we could do a glass walk. They said, a glass walk? You mean you're saying walking on broken glass? It's exactly what I'm saying. They said, ooh, tell us about that. So, yeah, there we were. I did my first glass walk with Google, in 2014. Went back the next year and did it again. And when I was at Google, I spent some time with one of the executives, and she basically said to me, she said, Dave, look, I don't know if you realize the position you're in. Corporate America will eat you alive. And here's why. They want someone that can come in and create this unbelievable, magical paradigm shift experience. And dude, you're at the top of your game. So I'm not telling you what to do, but you may want to think about starting your own company. And I went, okay, well, if Google's telling me that I could create some of the top corporate team building experiences in America, maybe I should listen to them. And I did. And so Firewalk Productions was born in 2014. And she was right, man, because right after Google, I went to NASA. Then I went to Notre Dame, and then Virginia Tech, and then Microsoft, and Heineken, and Remax, and Chick-fil-A, and YMCA. And, the next thing I know, I'm with Thomas Green on his podcast, right? So,
Now you've hit the big leagues.
So since 2000, in 2014, man, when we started Firewalk Productions, pun intended, man, we've been going hot and heavy ever since.
Well, congratulations. And it's great to hear the story. I think you're a great storyteller. And I was quite happy to listen. So thank you for the introduction.
Sure.
There's a couple of things that I wanted to follow up on. And I think you did cover it partially in your answer. But for those who, let's say they haven't been exposed to the concept of a firewalk before,
Right.
And perhaps they're not in that environment where they get the pump up, for lack of a better term, why would someone want to do it?
Yeah, right. Exactly. What's wrong with you? Well, if we go back in history, say 1,000 years, firewalking's been around a long time, over 1,000 years. And it's been used by cultures all over the world. The Phoenicians, for example, they're unbelievable with their firewalking and fire handling and fire twirling and all these things. The firewalk experience also has been, used by like the people of India. Unbelievable. They use it for a rite of passage. In other words, so before a boy becomes a man, before a girl becomes a woman, a wedding, the birth of a child, any type of graduation, celebration, marriages, all kinds of things, firewalking is used for a rite of passage. And again, it just doesn't stop there. The people of Portugal, the Spaniards, the Indo-Europeans, the night before the men would go into battle, the women would build the fire, bless it. And when I say bless it, they use different things to bless it. They use sage, they use lavender, they use tobacco, they use cornmeal, they use all kinds of different things to set up the ceremonial side of the firewalk. So the women would build it, the men would walk, and then they had to walk for them to be able to go into battle that next day. The Native American Indians, the Polynesians, the Hawaiians, literally, it's all over. So here's what we know, right? Most corporate America, business owners, CEOs, we all know what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. You're not going to just sit in a seminar and somebody get up on the stage and talk you into a new way of living. You can't. That's not the way it works. You've got to get up. You've got to engage. You have to bring your physiology and your human emotion together at the same time. That's what reprograms your brain. And so Tony knew that. He knew that the firewalk was an unbelievable experience, and that's why he brought it into his events. T. Harv Eker, the man that wrote the book The Millionaire Mindset, same thing. Wayne Dyer. There's a lot of people out there that know and understand that firewalk experience is life-changing. It is. And how do I know that? Because I've seen tens of thousands of people. I know. I'm standing there looking into their eyes before they walk, and they're scared to death. Your brain's going, no, right? And so, the fears we don't overcome, Thomas, I know you know this. The fears we don't overcome become our limits. And so if you don't learn to deal with fear, it's going to deal with you, period. And almost everything we do in life is influenced by fear. So doesn't it make sense to be able to take fear and go, excuse my French, but turn it into your bitch? So that, when you come up on things and fear's trying to stop you, fear's a liar. It's trying to take away from you. It's trying to keep you, in mediocre land, if you will, right? Because again, we know this. Everything we've ever wanted is sitting right over there on the other side of your comfort zone. And so you have to break through that. A Navy SEAL doesn't become a Navy SEAL by sitting in a classroom. I mean, that's part of it, but no. Where you become a Navy SEAL is when they take you out during Hell Week and put you in the ocean off the coast of San Onofre in that cold water. And then it's 3:00 in the morning. And then they tell you, oh, by the way, there's 9 different types of killer sharks in this water. Have a nice time. Right? So, and we know that it's training, it's physical, it's emotional. And so again, Robbins knew that. And I did too, because I watched it. And when you watch somebody, they're scared to death, and then 4 seconds later, they're jumping up and down and celebrating like a little kid, and you witness that thousands and thousands of times, I know. In
Have you gotten
fact,
any feedback from people who you've had do the firewalk and how it's impacted their lives?
oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. And that's one of my favorite parts. Um, Years ago, there was a gentleman who came to one of the firewalks, and he thought he was a screenwriter. He wanted to write a play. And his family said, no, ain't going to happen. You're not smart enough. You're not in the in crowd. You're not part of Hollywood. It's not going to happen. That's not the way it works. Well, how many of you have ever wanted to do something and your family try to beat you down? Huh? Sound familiar? Of course. So he came to the firewalk, spent the weekend, did UPW, went home and wrote Sleepless in Seattle. So, I remember a young man one time came, he was a collegiate athlete in South Florida, got hit by a drunk driver, lost both legs. So his whole life in a second was over because he can't run anymore. He's not, you know what I mean? His whole career, he probably would have went on to play pro football or pro baseball. He was that good. And so now he's lost both legs. So now he doesn't want to get married. He doesn't want to have kids. He's stacking on top of himself how bad and how worthless he is. Well, he's contemplating suicide. Well, one of his buddies said, hey, Tony Robbins is coming to town. We know you like Tony. Why don't you go see him before you make a permanent decision about something? And he did. And that kid came to that firewalk. And when I was out there with Tony and we're doing our thing and 1,000 people, all of a sudden here comes this kid in a wheelchair. And I'm like, what? And Tony looked at me and I looked at him and he positioned his wheelchair. He had a lot of upper body strength. He was an athlete, right? I think he was a gymnast as well, must have been, because he positioned his torso, kind of moved it up in that wheelchair. And he had kind of a turbo wheelchair, if you will, probably made out of alloys. And he positioned his torso. And the next thing I know, Thomas, he flipped himself forward. He landed on his hands and he started walking across the fire on his hands. I've gotten feedback from companies that says, ever since the firewalk, our production has skyrocketed. Our people are getting along. There's not the dissension. And here's what we know, right? I don't think this is much of a stretch for people to understand. On March of 2020, everybody got shredded. Companies got shredded because, we got divided. So, people started arguing about masks and vaccines. And I love Donald Trump. I hate Donald Trump. I mean, it just went on and on and on. It's like, shut up already. Because within a company, if people are arguing like that and they create dissension, production drops like a rock. And CEOs know that. Well, if they don't fix it, guess what's going to happen? They're going to find a CEO who will. And so that's where we come in, right? We know it's life-changing, period. And if you allow yourself to make it a big deal, it's even a bigger deal. Because here's what we know. Every single thing that happens to us in life, I don't care how good it is, I don't care how bad it is, we make up a story about whatever happened. And we're the architect. We can either create an empowering story or a victim story, right? Because again, we all do it. And I think Viktor Frankl gave us the greatest example of that. He wrote the book, Man's Search for Meaning. If you don't know who Viktor Frankl is in that book, I highly encourage you to read his book. It's not a fun book. It's a really, really hard read. And the reason is because Viktor went to Auschwitz. And he documented that. And they took everything away from him, just like everyone else that went to Auschwitz. No clothes, you're naked, it's cold, you're standing outside with other men and women, they're torturing you, they're screaming at you. And every single second that you're alive there, you don't know if that's going to be your day that you go to the chamber. Imagine what that would be like. You don't have a warm place to sleep, no food, and they strip you of everything except one thing. And Viktor figured that out. And that was his attitude. He had to give it up. He had to relinquish it. The other thing he realized is that if he didn't create a purpose, he was probably going to die just like the rest of them. And so he said, someone has to get out of here and tell this story. So when his purpose became so big, he figured out a way how to stay alive. Same thing with life. Because I believe this, Thomas, the two most important times in your life is the moment you're born and the moment you figure out why. And my purpose has just risen recently because of podcasting, because of people like you who do all the work as hosting and bring in people so that you can share knowledge and wisdom and ideas and concepts and beliefs, with your audience. A couple of months ago, I'm on a podcast and we recorded. And after we were done, we were just talking sidebar. And she said, the host, Natalia, said, "So David, let me ask you something. Have you ever done a firewalk for veterans?" And I said, "You mean like specifically?" And she said, "Yeah." And I go, "No, why?" She goes, "Dave, we have 200 vets." She goes, "I don't know if you know this or not, but there's a real high suicide rate." I go, "Yeah, the number I hear is 22 a day." She goes, "Nope, not even close. That's only if they leave a note. And heck, only 30% leave a note. It's more like 45 to 50 a day. Men and women are taking their lives." And we believe that you could take your firewalk experience and your experience in the personal development industry and have a really shot at saving their life, because we just talked about purpose. So all you'd have to do is reinstall purpose. Why does a vet take their life? They get deployed. They go to basic training. They learn how to kill. They get deployed. They get over there and they're in war. And let's face it, that's about as ugly as it gets. And they see their friends getting blown to pieces, but they have to move together as a unit, right, to keep themselves alive. So there's a purpose, a really strong purpose. And then one day they know it's coming. They go home and all of that goes away. All that connectivity, all that camaraderie, because they're shredded, right? Those men and women are now all over the country. And so depression sets in. Purpose drops, depression sets in. Next thing you know, guess what they're doing? They're reaching for something to help deal with the depression, whether it's drugs or alcohol. Next thing you know, we lose them. So when I talked to Natalia that night, I said, "Hey, listen, I'm in. I'm definitely interested. I'm a vet. My dad that raised me is a vet, highly decorated in World War II, a military officer, career. I grew up during the Vietnam era. So, I had a lot of friends and family that were military. So I said, I'm in. Give me a couple of days to think about it." Well, I went to bed that night and I woke up and it was as clear as I'm talking to you right now. The next thought I had was Operation Do No Harm. And when I thought about it, I thought there's 4 categories of people where suicide is high. Obviously, number 1, vets. Number 2, first responders, specifically firefighters, because you know what they do every day. When there's an accident, who do you think shows up? Who do you think has to clean it up and deal with all that? And then when they retire, it's just kind of the same thing, right? Now they're away from all their buddies, and every day your purpose was to go pull people out of cars and, do CPR and save people's lives, right? So that kind of goes away. The other category is single moms. Now, I was born to a single mom, so that's a real soft spot in my heart. Single moms have it really hard. And then the other category, the 4th category, is children who've been abused and neglected. So we went forward. We created Operation Do No Harm. We've got our first event scheduled for April 12th and the 13th in a place called Modesto, California, which is right in the middle of the state. And kudos to the Rotary Club there who's sponsoring it. Ed Parkcott is the president of that, and he's the one that organized it. I was on his podcast, and we got to talk about it. He said, "Dave, we'll sponsor you. Come." Well, I've got 4 big companies coming to be there to watch, observe, and see at what level they want to get involved. They're bringing a production company. The one company's probably dumping $25,000 just in bringing the production company to come film this and create. They want it to go viral. We want it to go viral, and that's the way you do it. So though corporate America, Thomas, has been really good to me, all those companies I mentioned, they're great. They hire me. Well, now I can do it both ways. I can say a company can come to me and I'm going to say, "Listen, you got an option here. If you want to donate, which makes it a tax write-off, to Operation Do No Harm, Operation Do No Harm will hire Firewalk Productions and we'll come in and put on the event in your city. We'll do up to 300 vets. We'll do all the work. We'll do all the heavy lifting, and your brand gets the recognition." So it's a win-win, just crazy win for corporate America. And we'll go on tour and we'll start doing this all over America. And they just pick what category you want. Depends on the company, right? Like if a company builds PlayStations, right, for kids, they might want to sponsor one for single moms or the kids, right? So we think we've got a category there for just about everybody, because let's face it, everybody that's listening, that's ever going to listen to me and us, they know a vet, a first responder, a single mom, or a kid that's probably been abused. So, we've got a category and a situation that they can help and, again, make their brand look really, really good. And at the same time, not just to the community will they look good, but their people can get involved. So now they're working for a company and they get to say, hey, guess what my company did? We just saved 300 veterans or 300 first responders or moms or whatever it is. So again, it's a really, really beautiful thing. And it took me 3 decades to get here. And it's pretty clear what my mission and what my objective is, going forward.
I think that's amazing, and it's lovely to hear. And if I can be of any help in that regard, I'd love to help, even if that means just introducing you to someone, because I've met a fair number of people who meet that criteria. So yeah, I guess I'd just say thank you for doing it.
Yeah, well, thank you, because you know what? At the end of the day, Thomas, without hosts like you, it's going to be hard to get my message and mission out there in front of people, so for consideration. Because you guys do all the work. You're a host, man. I don't think people realize how hard podcasting is. It sounds really good, and it is. It's a great way to get your book or your vision or your message or your product or your service out there. However, as a host, you also have to realize that, it's a lot of work, right? You know that, all the editing and all the appointments and all the there's a lot to it. And, guys like you and Natalia who interviewed me and Ed and all those, kudos to you guys. Because again, without you, this would be much, much more difficult, and it would take me much longer. And I'm 70 years old. I still got plenty of gas in the gas tank, right? However, the question is, how much longer am I going to continue to do this?
Well, podcasting is easier when you get to speak to people like you. So, you good guests make it easier. I did want to ask a bit of a comedic question. Is there any instances where you've done a firewalk for someone or helped someone and it's been a bit unorthodox in the sense that they haven't quite followed the instruction, and there's been, I don't know, either a laugh or something out of the ordinary?
Not in a firewalk, but in one of my glass walks we did. I offer glass walking because, as you can probably guess, logistically speaking, sometimes firewalking isn't always possible. So we have the glass walk experience, just like I did for Google and NASA. So we're at an event, and we're in Montreal, and I'm with my client. I do 2 events a year with these guys, one in Montreal and one in Paris. And in fact, we set a world record in Paris in 2019, where we glass walked over 1,500 people. So anyway, so we're in Montreal. We got about 350. And one of the people that, was helping me came running over, and she said, hey, Dave, this lady just cut herself. I said, okay. So this has never happened before, right? So I go back to where she is, and she's with a paramedic or an EMT. And she's sitting there, and there was a little tiny piece of glass in her foot. And, they got it out, and the paramedic had put some Neosporin on it and put a bandage on it. And I said, so what happened? And she goes, I didn't follow your directions. I went, okay, which part? Well, when we teach people to glass walk, here's what happens. When they get to the end, they have to stop. Don't step off the glass yet. And what we have to do is you have to lift up your foot. We have to visually inspect it. Then we have a brush, and we brush their foot off. And then you put your foot down. In this case, she was on carpet. Well, when she got to the end, she was so excited that she made it to the end, she didn't let somebody inspect her foot. So what did she do? She jumped off the glass. Thank goodness it was on carpet and not a hard surface. And she got a little piece of glass in her foot. So when I'm talking to her about it, I said, so, what happened? She goes, well, again, I got to the end and I didn't follow your directions. And I go, okay, so what else? She goes, well, I celebrated too early. And I didn't let him wipe my feet. And I said, well, how often does that show up in your life? And she said, all the freaking time. And she didn't use the word freaking. So it was supposed to happen. We had another comical time. When I did the world record in Paris in 2019, my son went with me, which was great. He came to help me because I've got to take 7 suitcases of glass through the airport. And I did it one year by myself and it about killed me. So I took my son the following year. So he's helping me and he's on one of the lanes and he's one of the guys that's sweeping people's feet. Well, he's wearing the pants like a lot of young people do, with the holes in the knees and the holes in the pants and all that, right? Well, when you walk on glass, you're pressing it down. It can break, it can crack, and little fragments of glass can pop out onto, again, this was a hard surface. This wasn't carpet. Well, sure enough, little piece popped out. My son put his knee on it. And it cut his knee. So he wasn't even walking. And I'm like, you may want to wear pants next time. In fact, I get people, I encourage them to put on knee pads because they're down on their knees for, like an hour at a time, depending on how many glass walkers. But that's where we did the world record. We glass walked over 1,500 people. That was also the event where one of the people came up to me. She goes, Dave, this guy wants to walk on his hands. I go, what? She goes, yeah, I need your help. So I go down there and sure enough, there's a guy, his name's Cedric. We become good friends. He's in a wheelchair and his lower from the waist down didn't develop, so basically his legs don't work at all. And he said, hey man, can I do this? Can I, get on my hands and do this? And I said, if you think you can, you're right. So sure enough, this guy got down. I got a video on my website of it, as a matter of fact. And he went down and took like a step and he did a push-up. I think he did 2 of them. And then he got back up into the chair and it was pretty spectacular, man. So yeah, I've seen people walk on glass on their hands and I've seen people walk on fire on their hands. So, something, I'd love to leave this little tidbit for your listeners. When I do an event, I put a screen behind me and I put a picture of this guy and he's standing in a location that's pretty obvious where he's standing. So I'll talk for 20 minutes. And next thing, once I get to a point where I got the crowd pretty much listening intently, I'll say, hey, by the way, who here could tell me where my friend here is standing? And somebody will go, Mount Everest. And I'll say, that's correct. And let me tell you something else about Eric. That man right there has climbed the 7 highest mountains on earth. And he got to the summit of all 7. Put him on a mountain bike, he can tear it up. Put him in a kayak, he can probably navigate almost every river in the world. But here's something that you need to know about Eric. He's blind. So I don't want to hear your shit. Don't even come to me with some bullshit excuse of why you don't think you can do something in life. That dude right there is blind. And he's climbed the 7 highest mountains on earth. What do you think he tells himself every day when he gets up in the morning? Hit the snooze button? I don't think so, right? And that's the beauty. It's one of the things I teach. Don't negotiate with yourself. If you tell yourself you're going to do something, do it. If you say you're going to get up at 5 o'clock and go to the gym, do it. Because if you start negotiating yourself, it'll keep creeping in. Then you won't do this and you won't do that. And that's not how you live an extraordinary life. Again, one of my mentors said something to me a long time ago, Thomas, and I never forgot it. He said, Dave, here's what you need to know. Every human on this planet has 2 lives. And the second one starts when you realize you have only one. So ponder that for a minute. There's nothing, I don't think there's anything that you're not going to be able to do if you set your mind to it. And, I came from a pretty hardcore background. I was grossly addicted to drugs and alcohol for many years. And on June 8th of 1988, I woke up that morning. I said, I'm done. That's it. Not doing this anymore. And it was either call AA or take your life because I can't deal with the pain anymore. And so I called Alcoholics Anonymous. And they came and picked me up. And I went to my first meeting, went to 4 meetings on June 8th of 1988. And they gave me a little chip. And for those of you who are watching, you can see it. For those of you listening, I'm holding up a chip. It's a medallion, and it's from AA. And they gave it to me on the first day. And on the back, it has a serenity prayer. And on the front, it says, to thy own self be true. And so I got one at 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year. Picked up one last year for 35 years. And if I don't drink here in 2024, I'm going to pick up one for 36 years. And that's literally how I got into the personal development industry, because I was up late at night all the time. I had insomnia when I was first getting sober. And I was up late one night, and there he was, Mr. Motivation himself, Mr. Infomercial. He was being produced by Gunther Ranker, and it was Tony Robbins, and he was selling a program called Personal Power. And it was a 30-day program you get at home. And I bought it. And to date this, it came on little white things called cassette tapes. Some of your listeners are going to go, what's a cassette tape?
That was actually my first exposure to Tony is the Personal Power cassette tapes.
Did you really? Are you serious?
Yeah.
No kidding. Well, so then right? People go, what's a cassette tape? I go, well, go to the Smithsonian. They're sitting there right next to 8-track tapes and reel to reel. So yeah, so that's how it happened. And then I went from Personal Power 7 years later to the live event, and here we are now, and Operation Do No Harm has taken over, and I'm just a very, very blessed man, very super grateful that I've been given this knowledge and this wisdom and this skill, if you will. When I retired from Tony in 2014, one of the last things he said to me, he goes, Dave, listen, man, with great wisdom comes great responsibility. Make us proud. And I think I've done that. So we need a lot of help, though. So if you want to be involved, like you said, everybody knows somebody. You may know a company that would like to sponsor this in your city, and we could come and do that. And as I said earlier, man, we'll do all the heavy lifting. We'll do all the work, and that company and their brand will get all the recognition.
Thank you for sharing that. I thought the message about the story about the lady who wasn't listening, I thought she even gets a lesson from that as well. So as well as the glass walk. So I thought that was funny.
Yeah,
and especially thank you for sharing your story about the 36th year sober. I thought that was very inspirational, and just about your whole outlook to life and the energy. I love it. So thank you very much. Is there anything that I should have asked you about today?
Why don't people get what they want in life? It's real simple.
Please do.
Well, you know what I mean? Why don't people get what they want in life? Well, you'll hear a lot of BS, just like my buddy Eric, who's blind, climbed the 7 highest mountains. I don't have the time. If you ever catch yourself saying that's one of the biggest lies on earth. Why? Well, I can prove it's a lie, because we have time for anything we're committed to. Think about that for a minute. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have the resources. I don't have the background. I'm too young. I'm too old. Blah, blah, blah. Henry Ford, who started Ford Motor Company, gave us a great lesson. And he said, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So why don't we get what we want in life? Well, typically why we don't get what we want in life is there's a bullshit story we tell ourselves why we can't have it. And here's what I know. Change your story, change your life. Again, everything that happens to you in your life, you create a story about it. I don't care how bad it was. I don't care how good it was. You're the architect. You have the pencil and the paper. You get to create that story. And I would encourage you, anytime you want to make a shift, change your story. And if you're telling a story that embellishes and it doesn't support you, and it's not encouraging, and you're doing it to get attention, you're telling the wrong story.
Amazing answer.
Yeah, it can be that easy.
And totally true in my perspective as well. So thank you. For the people who want to connect with you or hire you, where do they go?
I'm very accessible. You can just go to our website, because everything's there. Firewalkadventures.com. That's Firewalk Adventures with an S, one word, firewalkadventures.com. My Facebook page is there. My LinkedIn's there. Instagram's there. YouTube's there. The Dave Albin Firewalk Academy is there. I run an academy once a year. So I keep it small, intimate, but I'll bring in like 18 people, and I spend 5.5 days up here in the Appalachian Mountains. in Northwest North Carolina. And I teach them all my stuff. I teach them the glass walk, all the firewalks, the board break, the brick break, the arrow break, the rebar bending, how to talk to fire marshals, how to do sales, how to do marketing. And so then that way they can go back into their respective communities and do what I do. And then I'm their backup, right? I'm the guy that they come to if they need me. They can literally have me come to, I've already done that where somebody, one of my grads had an event and wanted me to be there, and I did, and the client helped pay for it. So, if you're a business owner, an entrepreneur, or maybe you're a CEO and you want to send one of your people for your entire company so that you can create your own custom corporate team building experiences, the Dave Albin Firewalk Academy might be a consideration. We do it every October. And I think for our event coming up in 2024, I know we have 4 or 5 spots still available. So it's still good. Or if you want to hire us to come put on an event for you and your company, that's obviously still available. Or if you want to sponsor an event, through the nonprofit side of things, and you want to bring attention to your brand, doing it that way, that can all be created and done through going to firewalkadventures.com.
Well, thank you for that. And I do want to say you've made a massive difference to my day, so I really appreciate it. And I'm sure that if you continue doing podcasts, that will be the same for others as well. So thank you for that, and also for being a great guest today.
Thank you, brother. Let's do it again sometime. Absolutely.